Okay guys, I want to talk to you today about something that most analysts are completely ignoring because everyone right now is focused on the missiles, the explosions, the strikes on Qatar. The fires at Roslafen, everyone is watching the war, but nobody is talking to you about what this war means for your life, your savings, your grocery bill, your retirement, your mortgage. The practical reality of what happens to ordinary people when the global energy system starts to break. Oil hit $116 a barrel today. That is a 60% increase in 20 days. 20 days, guys. Think about that. The fastest oil price increase since the 1973 Arab oil embargo. And I want to be very clear with you about something. This is not going back down anytime soon. The infrastructure that was damaged this week, the Ras Laffan LNG terminal in Qatar, the South Pars gas field, the Saudi refineries, these facilities do not recover in days or weeks. Energy analysts are saying months, possibly years. So the question is not whether this will affect you. It already is. The question is what you can do about it. And today I want to walk you through 5 specific things, practical, concrete, actionable things that every person should do right now before oil hits $150, because $150 is not a prediction. Based on the game theory of this war, based on the escalation trajectory we are watching in real time, $150 is a realistic outcome within the next 60 to 90 days. And the people who prepare now will be in a fundamentally different position than the people who wait. Does that make sense? All right, let's go. Okay, before I give you the 5 things, I need you to understand why this energy crisis is different from every previous oil shock, because most people are thinking about this the wrong way. They are thinking about it as a temporary spike, like 2022 when oil went up during the Ukraine war and then came back down. And they are assuming this will resolve the same way. It will not, and here's why. In 2022, the global energy system had alternatives. Europe redirected gas supplies. LNG terminals were expanded. OPEC increased production. The system had flexibility built into it. This crisis is different in 3 fundamental ways. First, the geographic scope. This is not one country's supply being disrupted. This is the entire Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, South Pars, Ras Laffan, Saudi refineries, all being disrupted simultaneously. The Gulf supplies roughly 20% of the world's oil and enormous portions of global LNG. You cannot reroute that volume quickly. There is simply no alternative infrastructure large enough to absorb it. Second, the duration. This war is not ending in weeks. Based on everything we have analyzed, the interceptor math, the proxy network, the political dynamics in Washington, this conflict is heading toward a grinding multi-month war of attrition. Every week it continues. The energy disruption compounds. Third, the damage is physical. Facilities have been struck, pipelines have been damaged, production has been suspended. You cannot tweet your way back to $70 oil. The physical infrastructure has to be repaired. And when you're in a war zone, repair crews cannot even access the facilities. This is a structural energy crisis, not a temporary spike. And structural crises require structural responses. Which brings me to the 5 things, okay? Let's go through each one. The first thing you need to do is audit your energy exposure immediately, okay? Most people have no idea how much of their financial life is exposed to energy prices. They think about petrol, they fill up the car, they complain about the price, and they move on. But energy exposure goes far deeper than your petrol bill, okay? Think about your heating. If you heat your home with gas, natural gas, or LPG, your bills are going to increase significantly over the next 60 to 90 days. Qatar supplies 20% of global LNG. That supply just got disrupted. European gas futures are already up 24% from yesterday alone. That increase will reach your bill within 1 billing cycle. You need to know now whether your heating contract is fixed or variable. If it is variable, you are directly exposed to these price movements. If it is fixed, you have a window. But fixed contracts end when yours ends. You need to be prepared. Think about your food. Almost nobody connects food prices to oil prices, but they are directly linked through the supply chain. Every product in a supermarket was transported by vehicles that run on fuel. The fertilizers that grow the food, They are made from natural gas. Urea, the world's most important fertilizer, is a natural gas derivative. And Iran is one of the world's largest urea exporters. With South Par's damaged Iranian urea production is already being disrupted. Fertilizer prices are moving. Food prices follow fertilizer prices with a delay of 3 to 6 months. So the audit is simple. Write down every monthly expense that is directly or indirectly connected to energy, heating, transport, food, any business you run that depends on logistics. Know your exposure before the price moves find you, because right now you still have time to respond. A month from now, you may not. The second thing you need to do is reduce discretionary debt as fast as possible. Okay? I know this sounds like standard financial advice, and you are right, it is. But here's why it is urgent right now. In this specific moment, in a way that it wasn't 6 months ago, when oil prices spike at this speed, central banks face an impossible choice. If they raise interest rates to fight the inflation caused by energy prices, they risk triggering a recession. If they don't raise rates, inflation becomes embedded in the economy. In 2022, they raised rates. Aggressively, American mortgage rates went from 3% to 7% in 18 months. Millions of people who had variable rate loans were suddenly paying thousands more per month. People who had taken on debt, assuming low rates would continue, were financially destroyed. That same dynamic is now building again. Except this time, the energy price shock is faster and broader than 2022. And it is happening on top of debt levels that are already at historic highs in most Western economies. The American national debt just crossed $36 trillion. Consumer debt is at record levels. Corporate debt is stretched. When the financial system is disleveraged and an energy shock hits, the risk of a cascade is real. You cannot control what central banks do. You cannot control whether a recession comes. What you can control is your own debt position. The lower your discretionary debt, credit cards, personal loans, anything with a variable rate, the less exposure you have when rates move. This is not about being fearful. This is about positioning. The people who had low debt in 2008 were able to buy assets cheaply when others were being forced to sell. The people with high debt were wiped out. The same logic applies here. Get lean now while you have the choice. The third thing, and this one surprises most people, is to build a 90-day essential supply buffer. Okay? Now, I'm not talking about panic buying. I'm not telling you to build a bunker. What I'm talking about is basic supply chain resilience, because most people have never thought about where their essential goods actually come from or how fragile that supply chain actually is. Think about this. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 20% of the world's traded oil. The Ras Laffan terminal in Qatar, which just got hit, supplies 20% of global LNG. The Red Sea routes, which the Houthis have been disrupting for months, carry a huge portion of Europe's trade with Asia. These are three of the most critical supply chain arteries in the global economy, and all three are simultaneously under pressure right now. When supply chains break down, the things that become scarce first are not the things people expect. It is not petrol that runs out first. It is the products that depend on long supply chains, medications, electronics, certain foods, industrial goods that get manufactured abroad and shipped over long distances. The 2021 supply chain crisis, which was caused by a much smaller disruption than what we are seeing today, created shortages of everything from semiconductors to baby formula. A 90-day buffer of essential goods, the things your household genuinely cannot function without, is not survivalism. It is rational risk management in a period of supply chain uncertainty. I'm talking about essential medications, staple foods with long shelf lives, basic household supplies. If the supply chain disruptions resolve in 90 days and you don't need the buffer, you just use the supplies you bought. No harm done. If they don't resolve, you have protected yourself and your family from the sharp end of the shortage. This is exactly what the wealthy already do, by the way. Large institutions hold strategic reserves. Governments hold strategic petroleum reserves. Corporations hold inventory buffers. The reason they do this is that they understand supply chain risk in a way that most individuals do not. You can apply the same logic at the household level. It costs relatively little. The insurance value is enormous. The fourth thing is to reconsider your exposure to dollar-denominated assets. Okay? Now, this is the most important one, and it is the one that requires the most explanation, because what is happening right now is not just an energy war, it is a currency war. And if you don't understand the currency dimension, you are going to miss the single biggest financial risk of this entire crisis. Let me explain. The petrodollar system has been the foundation of the dollar's global dominance since 1974. The deal is simple. Gulf states sell oil in dollars. Those dollars get recycled back into American Treasury bonds. This creates permanent global demand for the dollar, which allows America to borrow cheaply, print money, and maintain financial power. Right. Now, Saudi Arabia said today, and I quoted this earlier, the trust has been completely shattered. Qatar, one of America's closest Gulf allies, just expelled Iran's military attachés after Iranian missiles struck their gas facility. The Gulf states are in crisis. And here's what this means for the petrodollar. If the Gulf states begin to question whether American protection is worth maintaining the dollar relationship, if they start looking at alternative arrangements, then the structural demand for the dollar begins to weaken. And when dollar demand weakens, the purchasing power of dollar-denominated assets weakens with it. I'm not saying the dollar is going to collapse tomorrow. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this war is the most serious challenge to the petrodollar system in its 52-year history. Iran is deliberately targeting the Gulf energy infrastructure, specifically because it is the mechanism that sustains the petrodollar, and it is working. The Gulf states are scared. Saudi Arabia is furious. Qatar is in shock. In an environment like this, having your entire financial life in dollar-denominated assets is a concentration risk. Hard assets, real estate, in stable markets, physical gold, commodities historically hold value during periods of currency stress, far better than paper assets. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, but I'm telling you to think seriously about concentration risk in a moment when the system that underpins dollar value is under the most serious pressure it has ever faced. The fifth thing, and this is the one that nobody talks about because it sounds too simple, is to understand what is actually happening so that you cannot be manipulated by it. Okay? Let me explain what I mean. Every time there's a major geopolitical crisis, three things happen to ordinary people. First, they panic and make bad financial decisions based on fear. They sell assets at the bottom, they hoard the wrong things, they overreact or underreact depending on whatever narrative the media is pushing that week. Second, they get manipulated by political narratives designed to make them accept things they would never otherwise accept. Higher taxes, emergency powers, surveillance restrictions. Every major crisis in history has been used by those in power to expand that power. And the people who do not understand the real mechanics of what is happening are the most vulnerable to that manipulation. Third, and this is the most important, they miss the opportunities. Because every crisis creates opportunities for the people who understand it. The 1970s oil crisis was devastating for most people. But the people who understood what was happening bought energy assets, bought property in the right locations, positioned themselves correctly, and they came out of the crisis far better than they went in. Understanding is protection. When you understand why Iran is targeting Gulf energy infrastructure, not randomly, but as a precise economic warfare strategy, you're not going to panic every time a new strike happens. You understand the trajectory, you can make calm, rational decisions. When you understand why the petrodollar is under pressure, you're not going to be surprised by currency movements that shock everyone else. You have already positioned for them. This is why the analysis matters. This is why game theory matters, not as an intellectual exercise, as practical preparation for a world that is genuinely changing faster than at any point in most of our lifetimes. All right, let me bring all five together quickly, because I want you to walk away from this video with something actionable, not fear, actionable preparation. Number one, audit your energy exposure. Know exactly where your financial life is connected to energy prices before those prices move further. Number 2, reduce discretionary debt as fast as you can. Get lean before interest rates move in response to inflation. Number 3, build a 90-day essential supply buffer, not survivalism. Rational supply chain insurance. Number 4, reconsider your concentration in dollar-denominated assets. In a period of genuine petrodollar stress, diversification is not paranoia, it is prudence. Number 5, understand what is actually happening, because understanding is the only thing that separates the people who navigate a crisis from the people who get destroyed by one. Oil is at $116 today. The infrastructure that has been damaged this week is going to take months to repair the war that causes damage. It's going to continue. This is not the time for panic. This is the time for clarity. The people who come through in the next 12 months in a strong position will not be the ones who are lucky. They will be the ones who understood the game theory of this crisis early enough to act on it. That is what we do here. And if you want me to go deeper on any one of these 5 areas, the currency question, the supply chain risk, what $150 oil actually does to different economies, let me know in the comments below. Because this story is far from over, and I will keep bringing you the analysis as it develops